So let's take a look at one of the most twisted and creepy miniatures that Games Workshop has made for a while. Talk about a great performance for a Chaos detachment that the internet at large have written off, a confirmed launch date and details for Age of Sigmar 4th edition, and some 40k releases and prices. Let's do a roundup of what's been going on in Warhammer. Hello and welcome back to Warspecs Tactics, where today I thought I'd just do a quick roundup of Games Workshop's news and releases, a bunch of things that I found interesting but didn't really need their entire video to cover them all individually, and for this one I thought I'd also talk about a rather interesting tournament performance for a Chaos Cultist army. Jumping straight in though, one of the most interesting miniature reveals of the week was this thoroughly nightmare-fueled Malstrain Coalescence, an utterly twisted new Psyker model aimed at Necromunda that certainly feels like it could be one that you could use in Warhammer 40k Genestealer cult armies in some way or another. I feel like if you wanted something a bit more eldritch horror than the Benefactus miniature, then this one does have a bit of a similar sort of vibe, going for a human zoanthrope sort of affair. But rather than a fairly friendly big brain person, this is one where the mutation has just gone rampant, and it certainly seems to be going for sci-fi horror vibes as opposed to cultist leader. The idea for this one is that he's a hovering corrupted Psyker that's to be usable in Necromunda with the Malstrain Genestealers and any gangs that have been corrupted by them. These are the twisted Genestealers of Hive Secundus that have survived a massive orbital bombardment, and the after effects of that corrupted their patriarch, so the Genestealers that it produces are more twisted and freakish offshoots than normal. Slightly devolved genetics with all sorts of weird extra mutations, and I thought that the actual Genestealers were pretty nicely done, but it looks like they decided to turn up the body horror to 11 for this thing. Appearance-wise, it looks like it's basically an alien thing that's mutated from a human, but really doesn't have too much of the outward human skin still left on it. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the Chaos Accursed Cultist in its own way, but more tyrannous than chaos. Some rather horrendous tentacles protruding from all sorts of places they shouldn't, most notably that extra grim one protruding from the mouth of the human that this thing was before, another one penetrating its arm, and just one limply hanging leg as the thing propels itself along with its psychic energy and tentacles. As it goes, this freakish horror thing has been received really quite well. Probably not going to be to absolutely everyone's cup of tea that they want in their armies, but maybe if you're going for an utterly gritty and massively disturbing Genestealer cult force, I'm sure this thing could find a home there. The only thing I did notice that might put some people off though is that it does look like it's going to be a Forge World resin miniature as opposed to a Games Workshop plastic one. Kind of annoyingly, they didn't really clarify it in the article, but looking at a few of their social media posts, it seems that they've confirmed that it will indeed be Forge World resin, and that will be a turn off to some people, not least because of the extra price that you might expect from it. Let me know your thoughts though. I do feel like the sculpt is very nicely horrific. Kind of a shame it's not in plastic though. Next up, for the major release that's just around the corner, we've got the Age of Sigmar launch date confirmed. I think I'd skimmed over it at the time, but they basically announced it when they talked about a launch campaign for the new edition, and the Age of Sigmar launch does look like it mirrors the 40k 10th edition one in quite a lot of ways. Basically, this great big box set with the Stormcast Eternals versus the Skaven will go on pre-order on the 29th of June, and then full release on the 13th of July. It looks like it's one of their normal 2-week pre-order ones. Sometimes they've pushed it out a bit longer for particularly big box set launches. I guess that means that we'll see the full announcement and anything else that's coming out alongside it on their Sunday pre-order article on the 23rd of June. At the start of the edition, it looks like they've got a new campaign launching that'll mirror the Warhammer 40k Leviathan one. This one's called Slaughter at Hell Crown. The narrative for this one is that it's a major fortress city that the Stormcast and Skaven are fighting over, as the best staging post for each faction to launch great incursions into the other faction's realms. I'm sure people who follow Age of Sigmar a bit more closely will know better, but I kind of wonder if it was the battle that was depicted in that really quite nice launch trailer for it. As with the whole Leviathan campaign, where the Tyranids won that one, there's QR codes in the Skaven tied box sets to submit results for Skaven vs Stormcast, and the overall winner of the campaign will determine that one important battle in the lore, and then gets to see their new miniatures that all come alongside their army book for the new edition first. At least in 40k, that did actually follow up with the miniatures being released in the order of the people who won the campaign. The Tyranids Codex and all their new miniatures landed first, and then the Space Marines followed like a month after. It's believed that the prices for the Skaven die box set will be these ones. Games Workshop was running a giveaway for copies of the box, and they listed the prices at £160, $265 US, or €210. Obviously we won't know 100% until they actually confirm prices for it, but that does seem more or less what I'd expect for this kind of box set. It's really quite closely mirroring the prices for Leviathan. It has gone up a little bit since then, though it is a year later, and Games Workshop do like to ratchet up their prices over time. I feel like as Warhammer goes, it's going to be one of the better deals that Games Workshop put out there, even if the overall price is very expensive. 74 gaming miniatures, including some acolytes and hangers-on. Quite a lot of those are clan rats though. And then a few terrain pieces, rule books, and all sorts of paper accompaniment things. They've got quite a bit of stuff for playing Spearhead. Finally, again similar to what they did with Leviathan, they've got some extra launch goodies thrown in if you pre-order the box set. Apparently, if you get it via the Games Workshop web store, you get a fun set of objective tokens with Stormcast or Skaven symbols on. If you pre-order it at Games Workshop stores, then there's what they're calling command point trackers, little metal tokens with again Skaven or Stormcast symbols, and then finally in independent stores they have a little notebook with a twin-tailed comment being split apart by some warpstone apparently. In the past, I'd just be a little bit more dubious as to Games Workshop dispensing good supplies of freebies to independent stores. They don't always necessarily get enough of these freebie type things. In any case, I guess they'll be featuring that pretty heavily on the Warhammer community page over the next couple of weeks. Looks like they've got a battle report go live on Warhammer community for the new edition today, with the contents of the launch boxes facing off against each other. Next up, out of the week's tournament results, one of the most interesting army lists that did well was a Chaos Cult army list, run by Derek Apshey of 40k Dirtbags. I thought was easily interesting enough to cover on the channel, given that Chaos Cult is one of the Chaos detachments that people have basically largely written off when it came out in the Codex. Most people just pigeonholing it as a fun and fluff detachment, largely due to having to build around a very small list of units, not all of which are really considered massively top tier. Accursed cultists definitely have to do a lot of work. It does make it extra impressive when someone manages to pull in a big result at the Grand Tournament with it. He managed to go 7-1 at a big 200 plus player tournament, only being defeated in the second from last round. The detachment itself is largely a very movement focused one. The core rule meaning that your units can make desperate packs to get +2 to the move characteristic or +2 to charge rolls, something that helps out the Accursed Cultists quite a lot, but maybe it isn't quite so desperately stand out for some of the rest. And otherwise they have access to an advance and charge stratagem, a few damage buffs with a couple in melee and one at range, and a few quite usable enhancements that do genuinely help out Accursed Cultists. In any case, this was the list that Mr. Apshey was kind enough to share with me. It placed 4th at Frontline Gaming's ACO, a big over 200 player tournament, only being beaten by Blood Angels. It definitely looks very, very different to just about any other Chaos Space Marine list that people have been playing recently. The big standout block of the army are 3 units of 16 Accursed Cultists. They're the ones that have the torments for a bunch of damage to melee attacks, and have that new surge move mechanic where they can get closer to the enemy. And they're headed up by 2 Dark Communes with their big damage boosts and movement boosts, and one by Dark Apostle. The Dark Apostle has reviving D3 models, the Dark Communes, one of them has Scout, and the other one has a melee damage buff for extra damage if the squad's depleted. Apparently the plan is that often one of them might scout up the board and make a really long charge turn 1 with all that extra movement and locky in the advance and charge, and one of the other units might rapid ingress to allow them to get the jump on one of the enemy units in the midboard. Otherwise there's a massive amount of other cultist chaff, 4 units of 10 cultists, 4 units of traitor guardsmen, and 2 units of 20 cultists, so another casual 120 bodies to try and deal with, while you're no doubt trying to pour loads of anti-horde firepower into those threatening accursids. And all of them can put on a massive turn of speed if they're willing to risk the desperate packs. For more disruption, there's Cypher in a lone operative who can hit the enemy very hard with those pistols in a counter-attack, Fabius Bile who apparently rides with a unit of cultists in the Chaos Rhino, an interesting little combination where he makes that squad far more threatening than it should be, particularly with his own stats, and then a whole bunch of demon support, a unit of Demonettes which apparently is brought in to take some Seekers which again can first turn charge due to their massive scout and threat range, and then 3 units of 3 Nurglings for screening out things that might block scout moves and your own secondary objective support. Overall, it's just very cool to see a detachment doing well that lots of people had written off. I feel like it is certainly one that's massively player skill dependent though. Loads of value from coming from all the movement and board positioning things and getting in the right places to score, and not quite as much raw easy to use hard hitting damage output, even if those accursed cultists can make a big mess when they go in with maximal buffs. Really cool to see though, so thanks for sharing that. I'll leave a link to his video going over the army list in depth and how he played with it down in the video description, well worth checking out. Otherwise, back to the Warhammer news releases and teasers. I was interested to check back on the prices of that Sword and Shield upgrade frame that Games Workshop had done recently, the one for the Heresy era command squad. It looks like prices of this are confirmed from Games Workshop to be £18.50, $31.50, or €23. So basically that's saving the difference of £13 or $20, but minus 5 tactical Space Marine bodies that you'd otherwise get in the kit. I feel like as Games Workshop upgrade sprues go, it's maybe not the worst in the world. I feel like that's at a price where it's actually worth considering, just versus always getting the full kit if you did want these parts. I was talking in the last video that it could be an interesting way of kit bashing a bunch of Blade Guard with Assault Intercessors if you wanted to. In theory, if you got one box of Assault Intercessors and then 2 kits of this, then you could make 9 Blade Guard and a Blade Guard Ancient out of it, and then go generous on any other veteran adornments from your bits box to spice them up and add a little bit more veteran flair. I likely weigh that up against actually getting the Blade Guard box, though, given that you do get quite a few extra power swords and shields and things with that, so it could still be another way to kit bash a bunch of stuff, and you could even make some characters from it. Otherwise, for confirmed prices, it does seem that the Heresy era Marine character miniatures are remaining very expensive. Prices on these 4 are confirmed at £37.50, €46, or $58. This is Shadrach Meduson of the Iron Hands, White Scar's Hebrew Khan, Tybalt Mar, and Little Horus Aximand. These guys are all in Forge World resin, commanding those incredibly high prices. I think some of the sculpts here are really nice, but I feel like that's going to be a price that a lot of people out there just aren't really going to be able to justify for one singular Space Marine miniature, even if it's a cool one. Otherwise, I thought I'd check in on the Rumour engine this week, which looks like it's something Skaven potentially. I've seen some people debating whether it could be some sort of Cyber Construct or Dark Mechanicum thing for 40k, but looks kind of Skaven to me. The bit that feels like it gives it away is that sort of ragged stitching here that looks really quite similar to the feeder pipe on their Gatling gun thing from the launch box. Plus the blend of bionic and cloth bits on the same miniature does look kind of giveaway there. Otherwise though, looks like that's not the only teased Skaven miniature. I've seen a few people sharing these photos online, which looks like a leaked Skaven miniature that doesn't appear to have been shown off by Games Workshop yet. I believe that this sprue had been leaked a few months back, unless I'm getting that wrong, but apparently this edition of the Skaven model is one that was apparently mistakenly packed inside a Malkador tank sprue in place of one of the side sponson sprues, so kind of weird that a rat thing turned up in its place. Looks like it's some sort of Skaven character with a great big ranged weapon. I don't know if it's some sort of alternative version of Warlock Bombardier or something like that, but it's kind of funny that somehow Games Workshop can wind out posting out their new sprues months in advance. Does make me wonder how there can possibly be an error where you swap out part of a completely different tank for a character miniature. No idea how that might happen. Otherwise, on the 40k front, we've got plenty of things that are coming up. The balanced data slate is likely tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to looking through that in detail. And as mentioned last time round, there's likely going to be a big preview show on or around the 19th of July to tie in with Games Workshop's Tacoma Washington tournament. And given that would probably be the next reveal for Warhammer 40k, seems like they would have to be going at quite a rate if they wanted to fit in another reveal show before then. Otherwise, it's a bit of a mystery for the future for 40k. We still need the releases of a bunch of things that came out with codexes, the Chaos Lord, Benefactors and Jump Caroness, plus 4 kill teams for the Mandrakes, Night Lords, Jaegers and Brood Brothers. The next codex release will be the long-awaited Mystery Codex, which could be Agents of the Imperium, but not necessarily. And beyond that, we know that Age of Sigmar 4th edition is going to be coming out on the 29th of June, so that should be the big release at the end of this week, and then after that we've got Horus Heresy and Necromunda to come, both of which could be a week's worth of releases, the Mechanicum box set and the Necromunda Hive Secundus box set. It is kind of intriguing that we've got so little official confirmation as to what comes next on the 40k front though. I guess for Focus on the Game we're going to have more than enough to talk about in the meantime, what with a massive update of the game scheduled for tomorrow. In any case, I'll leave that there for this one. Let me know your thoughts on Games Workshop news and releases and big Chaos Cultist victories. Look forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to keep up with Games Workshop's news and releases and things. I do tend to post 40k videos most days. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description if you'd like to help support and keep all of these coming. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.